Aitah for telling my niece that the family does not like her fiance and that I won't be at her wedding. To provide some context, there is a 21-year age difference between my eldest brother and me. This means that my age, 28, female, is very close to that of his oldest daughter, 23, female, and we have grown up together very closely. I am the favorite aunt and have always viewed our relationship as one of friendship rather than just family. She confides in me when she faces issues she prefers not to discuss with her parents. She shares her experiences regarding her boyfriend and issues with friends. She would call me during her college years when she needed a ride home from a party or bar. I was also the very first person she informed when her boyfriend proposed. She called me at 6 a.m. the following morning because she was so thrilled to share the news. Regarding her fiancé, they have been in a relationship for 3 years, and he is 1 year younger than she is. She graduated from college in May 2024, while he is scheduled to graduate in May 2025. Their wedding is set for just a week after his graduation. He is studying biochemical and microengineering, is quite intelligent, and leans more towards being introverted with a dry sense of humor. Since she introduced him to the family, it was clear that their relationship was serious, so we made an effort to be warm and welcoming by inviting him to family gatherings and trips, buying him birthday and Christmas gifts, and genuinely trying to familiarize ourselves with him. However, whenever he is around our family, he constantly appears annoyed, as if spending time with us is painful. He expects my niece to remain by his side during family functions and gets irritated if any of the younger cousins, including my children, context. My niece is the godmother to my children. Ask her to play. He also insists she should leave at the same time he does, even if they drove separately. My eldest brother continuously defends him, claiming that he is merely introverted and that the size of our family makes him uncomfortable. He insists that he behaves differently in smaller groups or one-on-one situations, but I have yet to witness this, even when it was just the 4 of us with my husband and me. He speaks to everyone as if we are foolish and comes across as extremely condescending. Things became more complicated once they got engaged. Given our close relationship, I expected to be invited to join the wedding party, but she did not ask me. I felt a bit hurt, but chose to let it be, understanding that it is her special day and her decision. Later, his family arranged the engagement party without inviting any members of my family. She explained that it was a small gathering, limited to just their parents and siblings, but I later discovered she had misled me when I saw photos on social media. I confronted her about this, but she said she wasn't responsible for the guest list, and I attempted to overlook it. She also did not invite my mother or me to her dress outing, stating that there was a limited number of spots available, and she wanted to ensure his mother and sisters could accompany her. I then expressed that it really felt as if she was prioritizing his family over ours. She denied this, yet when I later inquired about their holiday plans, he stated they would be spending them with his family. My breaking point came in December and January. In December, she invited my husband and me to dinner, which I was looking forward to since she hadn't initiated any outings since her engagement. The dinner was pleasant but a bit awkward, as the conversation didn't flow smoothly with her fiancé. When the bill arrived, my husband took care of it after it had been on the table for about 15 minutes without any offer from them to split the cost, even though they had invited us. Then, as we were preparing to leave, they requested a serious conversation. I was puzzled as to why this hadn't taken place during the meal, but they proceeded to ask for financial assistance for their wedding. She stated that the costs had exceeded their expectations and that they needed help because their parents did not earn enough. I asked why they didn't wait until he had a job beyond just an unpaid internship, or until she could find a full-time position instead of a part-time one. I clarified that I wasn't outright declining, but simply wanted to understand their urgency in wedding planning. The wedding is about 8 months after their engagement. This conversation escalated into an argument about financial responsibility in which her fiancé claimed if we could assist, we should, as it was family. He followed that up by saying we had plenty of time to save again, as my husband explained that much of our money was invested for our children's future. After we offered $2,000 as a small contribution, my niece mentioned my savings from my deceased husband's life insurance. I asked her if she truly believed that bringing up my deceased spouse would help her. We then reiterated our offer of $2,000, and he challenged whether that was all we would contribute, prompting us to withdraw the offer. We left in a state of outrage. Before Christmas, my mother invited them over to bake because her fiancé enjoys making desserts and bread. He was so rude to my mother that she ended up coming over to spend time with her grandchildren and have tea because she felt so sad. My father was furious. Subsequently, neither my niece nor her fiancé attended our Christmas gathering. We had a family reunion around New Year's, and while driving two of my brothers and their wives home, we discussed how tired everyone was of him and expressed our wish that they weren't getting married. In January, it was my parents' 50th wedding anniversary. I organized a celebration for them, and we planned a trip to Mexico, which was collectively funded by my siblings and me for our parents. The fiancé was only attending the party since he could not afford to miss school for the trip. The party was formal, featuring RSVP invitations, a private venue, catering, and a semi-formal dress code. A week before the event, my niece texted me, informing me that her fiancé would not be attending the party due to a fraternity event. I told her this was an important family occasion, and I noted that it was disrespectful to skip out on an event one had RSVP'd to without a valid reason. I made it clear that I didn't view his fraternity as a substantial enough reason, especially considering how long he had known about the gathering. She said she would speak to him, but I never received any further updates, leaving me uncertain about his attendance. On the day of the event, he arrived late, dressed in a t-shirt, jeans, and a backward cap. My mother, still trying to be kind, expressed her happiness at his arrival, to which he responded, like I had a choice. He then remained seated, avoiding conversation with anyone at his table and neglecting to engage in any activities. When we were taking a family photo and invited him to join, he retorted, "This isn't my family." My mother broke into tears and excused herself to the restroom. I confronted him and bluntly told him that if he did not wish to be part of this family, he should leave. I expressed my exhaustion with his attitude and disrespect and instructed him to exit. When my niece attempted to follow him, I warned her that if she joined him, she should forget about coming to Mexico with us. She chose not to follow, but it was evident she was upset about him being dismissed. The adults in the family, approximately 12 of us, sat down with her to discuss our grievances regarding her fiancé, hoping to clarify the seriousness of the situation. However, she continued to defend him, asserting that we simply didn't know him well enough and that we made him uncomfortable. After that conversation, I told my husband that I could no longer act as if everything was perfectly fine. Therefore, we declined our RSVP for the wedding. She then texted me, asking for the rationale behind our decision, and I met her for coffee. I explained that I did not feel I could support her marriage and expressed my belief that he was not a good person, indicating that it seemed her independence and everything special about her were fading under his expectations. She disagreed and insisted that I simply did not understand. She then claimed that if I genuinely cared for her, I should swallow my feelings and attend her wedding. So, am I the antagonist? Should we attend the wedding? Was I wrong for expressing my feelings initially? Story 2. I told my dad he can't care for my daughter anymore after he pushed me away during a stressful moment and made insensitive comments. Hello, internet strangers. I have been contemplating this situation for several days. There is quite a bit of background, so prepare yourself for a lengthy narrative. I, 25 female, and my boyfriend, 26 male, welcomed our daughter in November 2024. I experienced a challenging delivery that necessitated an emergency cesarean section. I dealt with baby blues, and my physical and emotional recovery was quite slow during the initial months. Both my boyfriend and I faced difficulties in the beginning and again when I returned to work, which is common for many couples. We encountered typical issues such as a lack of intimacy, communication barriers, and the division of household responsibilities. We are currently in couples counseling and are improving as a partnership, but it is a gradual process. Additionally, I am attending individual therapy. Now, some context regarding the issue involving my father, 48 male. I have shared a very close bond with my dad since I moved in with him for college. It is not an exaggeration to claim that he has been my best friend. However, things changed when he returned from being away for an entire year, during which time he missed my entire pregnancy. From October 2023 to November 2024, he was in his home state assisting his mother, who was battling terminal cancer, and his father, who was rapidly progressing with Alzheimer's disease. The day after my daughter was born, my grandmother passed away following a 5-year struggle with illness. This context is crucial to understanding my father's state of mind after my daughter's arrival. Since his return, my father's behavior has become increasingly unusual. I believe he would identify himself as a feminist, which makes the following situations particularly strange. 1. When I was 4 weeks postpartum, he claimed that my need to recover from major surgery was as trivial as my boyfriend's desire for physical intimacy. He accused me of being selfish for prioritizing my own needs over my boyfriend's. 2. During that same conversation, he suggested I could please him in other ways, using my hand or mouth. He even implied that if I could not fulfill that need, it would be natural for my boyfriend to seek gratification elsewhere. 3. When I expressed my frustration that my boyfriend was not providing emotional support while I dealt with the baby blues, my father's reply was, "Emotions are challenging for men. Feelings are primarily a women's matter." 4. He told me that expecting my boyfriend to equally care for our child was unrealistic, insisting that my boyfriend was fighting his biological instincts and that he is biologically designed to procreate, while you are biologically designed to nurture the child. 5. After a particularly intense argument, I sought refuge with my dad and stepmother, 52 female, in hopes of gaining some time and space. They spent 4 hours lecturing me about how I was being too hard on my boyfriend. They insisted that if I loved him, it should be unconditionally, just as I love my daughter. They claimed he is a good man and that I should not expect him to meet my emotional needs, but rather seek those elsewhere. 6. The following morning, after the above conversation, I had barely slept because my daughter was quite fussy, and I was not in my own bed. My dad insisted that I needed to rest to emotionally reset. I told him I would, but only after I changed my daughter and put her back to sleep, as watching her sleep is incredibly calming for me. He pressured me to return to bed until he literally stood between me and my daughter, confronting me. When I snapped and told him never to come between me and my child again, he became aggressive. When I warned him that if he continued to behave that way, I would take my daughter and leave, he responded, "You can take your things and leave, but the baby isn't going anywhere." He only backed down when I insisted that I would not be separated from my child and did as he requested. After that incident, my boyfriend and I agreed to establish stronger boundaries with my dad. He and my stepmother had previously been our sole childcare providers, and we reduced their involvement to less than half of what it had been. We also decided to keep our relationship issues private and not involve our in-laws, maintaining that these matters would remain between us and our therapist. We have worked to improve our relationship and attributed the first few months to typical growing pains. He concurred that my dad's behavior was irrational, but we both considered it a result of losing a parent, understanding that such loss can lead individuals to act out of character. Since then, my father has made a series of passive-aggressive remarks which include, 1. I no longer know her schedule. It has been such a long time since I've taken care of her. It had only been 5 days. 2. Speaking to my daughter, he said, I'm sorry, sweetheart, but I no longer understand what your cries mean. I don't see you often enough. 3. While I was pregnant, my dad had agreed to care for our daughter at our house on days when I needed to go into the office. However, after her birth and my return to work, he and my stepmother expressed a preference for caring for her at their home. I inquired if they would be willing to make the 8-minute drive to pick her up, and I would collect her from them after work. This arrangement would prevent me from adding an additional 25 minutes to my morning routine while struggling to prepare an infant and 2 dogs for travel, and also diverting about 20 minutes off my route to work to drop them off. They reluctantly accepted this arrangement for the first week. Afterward, I requested that they return to watching the baby in our home, as they had originally agreed. I mentioned that if they could not accommodate this, I would ask my mother-in-law, 60 female, who is retired, to step in, since I was aware that they both still worked and had busy schedules. They insisted they wanted to assist us. My boyfriend and I arranged for them to have a makeshift office in our spare bedroom. While somewhat cramped due to leftover boxes from our move last summer, we endeavored to make it comfortable and functional, providing a large desk, a leather office chair, and an additional monitor. Last week, my dad texted to say he would be available to watch the baby the following week, but only at his residence. When I asked why the office at our home was unsuitable, he replied that he needed the space to spread out important papers and pace during calls. I then asked if he could pick up the baby, and if not, I would find a way to drop her off for the sake of simplicity. His reaction was, most people with childcare take their children to childcare, especially if they're not paying for it. I was extremely annoyed since I was only retaining them as childcare at their insistence. My boyfriend and I have repeatedly asked if they were too busy to watch her, reassuring them that we would arrange other options if it became burdensome. Nonetheless, they insisted they wanted to help in whatever way necessary and had agreed to care for the baby at our house or to pick her up and return her to theirs. We maintained that my mother-in-law is eager to come every day if necessary until I transition to a fully remote position. They continue to express a desire to assist, but it feels as if it always has to be on their terms in their space. With this in mind, I responded to my dad with the following. I understand your perspective, but the passive-aggressive comment appears unnecessary. You are correct that most people do handle it that way, but both you and Mom led me to believe you would be flexible and willing to watch the baby in our home since this is her space. It is evident that both of you are busy with work, so my boyfriend and I will rely on more adaptable arrangements until I transition to a fully remote role. He read my text and has not spoken to me since. Now I am left wondering if I expected too much. I assumed that if they were so eager to care for the baby, they would honor the commitment they made earlier. If they could not, that's fine. I would simply ask my mother-in-law since she is more flexible. So, Reddit, am I the one in the wrong? I apologize for the lengthy message. Kudos if you made it to the end. Story 3. My 8.50 revenge on my cheating, thieving ex. When I was attending university, I began a relationship with a man. Initially, he seemed amazing, committed to his studies, enjoyable to be around, considerate, and constantly surprising me with thoughtful gestures while working hard at his job, among other things. However, gradually, everything began to deteriorate. He started missing classes, eventually hardly attending at all. Even worse, he never contributed to household chores. He wouldn't wash dishes, clean, or do laundry, nothing at all. He even lost his job due to excessive absences. All he wanted to do was stay home and play Xbox or browse online message boards and forums. This was before the era of social media, back when dinosaurs roamed the planet. This situation forced me to pick up extra work shifts, sometimes even double or triple shifts, while also attending classes and studying. I later discovered that this was a recurring pattern for him. He would be genuinely committed to whatever interest he pursued, but then he would grow bored and revert to his old, detrimental habits. Following that, he would find a new obsession, and the cycle would repeat. I recognized that I should have terminated the relationship much earlier, but I clung to the hope that he would recover from his slump, thinking perhaps it was merely academic pressure affecting him. I desperately wished for things to revert to how they used to be. However, it was not meant to be. I discovered that he was unfaithful and ended the relationship. I was so overwhelmed by everything that it wasn't until the following day that our joint savings account crossed my mind. There was slightly over $5,000 in there, and aside from a few £100 contributed by him, the remainder was money I had saved. I checked the account, and it was entirely depleted. My ex-partner had emptied the account and moved into a new apartment with his mistress. I contacted the bank, but they informed me there was nothing they could do. He was an authorized user on the account. I reached out to the police, and they advised me there was nothing they could do either, as it was a joint account, which meant no criminal activity had occurred. They suggested pursuing the matter in civil court, but warned that I would likely spend more on legal fees than I would recover. My ex had taken $5,000 from me, and I felt utterly foolish. My frustration intensified when I saw his posts on various forums bragging about his new game consoles, games, televisions, and gadgets all purchased with my money. I am not typically a vengeful person. Petty occasionally, yes, but I've never desired revenge as much as I did at that moment, and I realized precisely how to achieve it. During my time as a student, I worked temporary jobs every summer to help fund my education. One such position was with a debt collection agency. The work was as unpleasant as you can imagine, but it paid exceptionally well and was only for a few months. My ex had been avoiding debt for many years, and he took pride in that fact. He was also proud that his debt was close to being statute barred and that he hadn't paid a cent. For those unaware, in the United Kingdom, creditors have approximately 6 years to collect a debt, after which it becomes statute barred. This means the debt is still owed, but creditors do not have a legal method to enforce payment, such as using bailiffs. My ex was only a few months away from achieving statute-barred status. However, what many people do not know is that making a payment on that debt resets the statute of limitations. If you make any payment, the 6-year period starts over. Previously, I had used my insider knowledge to help him evade repayment. Now, I would utilize it to strike where it hurt the most. By the end of our relationship, I had taken charge of everything including his debts. I had access to the relevant paperwork, so I knew who he owed and how much. I contacted his creditors. I was truthful, identifying myself as a friend wishing to make a payment on his behalf. I did not impersonate him, as that would have been illegal. They were not permitted to disclose information, but they could accept payments. I paid the minimum possible on each debt, around one on most, though one required a minimum payment of 1.50. It was the best 8.50 I have ever spent. I ensured to provide them with his new address and contact details, as well as his parents' address. Having worked in the industry, I knew they would not change the address since I was not the account holder, but they would take note of it. They had various systems in place to search for his name associated with that address and see if anything emerged. If they found a match, they would update the address. The trap was set. All I needed to do was wait. Months passed. Then it occurred. His forum posts shifted from boasting about his new gaming PC to panicking over a court summons. He called me and implored for advice. I told him to go away. Seeing that I would not assist him, he sought advice on the forums. One of his online acquaintances suggested that he not attend court, implying they would be unable to prosecute in his absence. This was terrible advice, completely false. In reality, failing to appear is one of the worst things one can do, especially in civil court. This situation was becoming more entertaining. The court date came and went. My ex, predictably, did not attend. A few weeks later, he shared photos of his empty apartment. Bailiffs had come and taken every last one of his shiny new gadgets and possessions. Furthermore, he ended up with several county court judgments. These are significant and can severely impact one's credit history, making it difficult to secure bank accounts outside of basic offerings, nearly impossible to obtain credit, including mortgages, and it can complicate renting, as many landlords do not prefer renting to individuals with county court judgments due to perceived risk. Additionally, he would struggle to find employment in the financial sector. Now that he was financially ruined and devoid of nice belongings, his mistress left him. I never recovered my $5,000, but it felt satisfying to see everything he had purchased with his ill-gotten gains taken away. I hope that $5,000 was worth it. For those questioning how a student accumulated 6 years of debt, he began at the university I attended when he was 25. Initially, he enrolled at a different university at 18 but dropped out at 19 and entered the workforce. Subsequently, he convinced his parents to finance a business degree as he aspired to become an entrepreneur. And for anyone concerned about the age difference, I deferred my university start date for a few years to travel. I was 22 when we began dating, and he was 26.